So, welcome everybody to New York City from the inside, a celebration. So, I'm Francine Witte. And this is the anthology. George will tell you a little bit more about the anthology, etc. And I'm going to just sort of break the ice, warm up the air with a poem from the anthology from a gentleman who lives in California, but he spends some time in New York City. Robert Scotellaro, who we affectionately know as Scotty. Caruso sweating and Big Nick in his underwear. On the hottest days of summer, when everybody's windows were open wide and he'd come around an old Italian wino sweating beneath a heavy wool overcoat 4 sizes too large. He used to roam the backyards between the tenement buildings and sing great songs in Italian with a clean and powerful voice. And people would lean on windows and throw money. Kids would sit with their legs hanging over fire escapes with their mouths open. When he finished, the old man would bend over like a bird and pick up coins and fill the pockets of his great overcoat. Sometimes when Big Nick was home, drinking beer in his underwear, he'd yell down to him, "Bravo! Bravo! Hey, Caruso, here!" And he'd throw over a fistful of singles, and the old man would sweat running down. The old man with sweat running down his face would stand under his window and pour out his soul and sing Nick's favorite, "Male Femina," and many of the women would cry, and the sun would shine down through the hot, muggy summer, and would rain money in the backyards. Robert Scotellaro, and that's in your anthology, as are many of you readers tonight. I'm going to introduce you to George Wallace, who you all know, man who needs no introduction, author of 30 some odd books, producer, editor, everything. He does it all. Renaissance man, if there ever was one. So, ladies and gentlemen, to kick off the evening, George Wallace.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes.
That's great.
No echoing.
Thank you all for coming. I want to thank you for being here today. This is our second live reading here in New York City from the inside. We did the first one in AWP, and last week we did one up at El Barrio for Jesus Papaletto Melendez. It was a good scene, but it's always great to be here at the Red Room of KGB Lounge. Let's put our hands together for the Red Room. Thank you for I want to thank Francine because she's been very instrumental in a lot of things, and Don Yorty, of course. There's a couple of people here who were very helpful to me in putting together the book, and I want to mention particularly Bob Holman, who helped me to meet a lot of people and get involved with a lot of people that otherwise would not have been in a book of 179 great poets from New York City. So put your hands together for all those who helped out. Thank you for coming. And thank you for being here. I consider this is a communal event, and that's what we're going to treat it as, and so I don't even have an order of business in calling people up here. I was going to do it alphabetically by personality disorder, but I can't remember everybody's condition. So I'm going to start with I'm going to go alphabetically from the bottom by first name, and that means Yuko Otomo. Please welcome Yuko.
Yeah! Brilliant!
Anyway, this is an amazing accomplishment. Thank you, George. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm reading Steve's poem and my poem, because he should be here. He is. Okay. This is Steve's poem, Steve Dalachinksy. Subway system. I have a double life, the homeless shaman said. There are two of me. I have two selves. I never use them at the same time. I live in double time. I try not to make it a habit. New York is my nightmare, my dream. It is what is beneath the trucks. Defiled virgin whore, maladjusted transsexual goddess, cross-eyed cross-dresser, homeless shaman as greasy as the trucks. I am consumed by jealousy, he says. It is my job to carry this burden so that you do not. New York is skeleton and frame, heaven, hell, tributes and lies. The facts as he sees them, skylight and light, city of fallen angels, extinguished stars. New York is nature mode, landscape and eats, Jesus, Buddha and God. New York lives on borrowed digital time, like shaman leading a double life, the good, the bad, and the epic center. Outside the center, outside time, apart from America, what is beneath the trucks, shaman living on the outside time. New York is two selves, never the same thing twice, never living together, as to not use each other up, body, soul, ripped, greasy, ugly love. New York is what is beneath the self, the other self. That's Steve's. I don't think I
You read it better than he would have.
That's not nice.
Wow, we love Stephen.
Okay, this is my.
Can't heckle the dead.
Yeah,
Come on.
I know. We need you to heckle because we don't have Steve Cannon.
This is true.
Yes.
I'm gonna heckle
Yeah,
Steve now.
I love it. I love to heckle.
You weren't that great a heckle.
Anyway, these are my poems. It's got two poems, and these are written for Robert Frank's The Americans, the photographer. And the title is his title. New York City. A man is a woman, and a woman is a man. Only when you hide your face, the word reveals itself clearly to you. Human hip bones, harder than those iron fences. Wind winds swifter, wiser, and faster than fish bones do. Troubles, pranks, tricks. A woman is a man, and a man is a woman, and feet are minds, and eyes are feet. Where is today's couch? That's one poem, New York City. Next one is called Bar, New York City. That's also the title of his photos. Don't shout. Speak easy in a hush. A jukebox shining like a monolith serenades our popular song of our youth. Let's fool ourselves thinking it's not drinks that we want, but the shaded interior of somewhere where the sun does not reveal the details of our life. Too cruel. Let's speak in a dry whisper, pretending that the sticky floors and the cloudy mirror suit our desire, well, to be left alone. Let's act as if we are proud and civil, not sorry and disproportion. Let's enjoy the dark daydreaming, together believing that everything is fine and dandy, finally. That's my point. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you, the book ends with a wonderful, powerful collage by Steve called Liberty or Death.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage for the first time Wanda Phipps, who wrote a really nice poem about returning to St. Mark's Place. She's going to read that, and hopefully another poem from her collection or from the book, whatever she writes. Please welcome Wanda Phipps.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me okay? Ah, it's a little, all right. This is called Waltzing Nostalgia. Now, every day, I hear the bells at St. Mark's Church ringing in the hours, and the noise of the street traffic, then party people occupying the sidewalk through the night, a new apartment full of new sounds, doors slamming in the hall, humming refrigerator, and the arms of a mini art installation moving on the mantle. Gold-painted prosperity kittens with their arms constantly waving, and the words, Ukraine shall overcome, and Crimea is Ukraine. I am back in a neighborhood where I used to live years ago. Things are familiar yet foreign too. I run into old acquaintances from when these few blocks held a tribe I felt a part of, or at least dangled on the edges of, or dallied there. But so many places are gone now. Sunshine Deli, Gargle, Mechanique, the gas station, the telephone bar, Kiev Diner, St. Mark's Books. All have gone, but I can still visit the same parks, Tompkins Square, Liz Christie Garden, all the community gardens, and once in a while, gaze into the same eyes, older, but still recognizable. And here's another poem that's not in the book, and it's about gardens as well. It's called In the Garden. A sentence, a line, a sentiment. Work through haze, walk through fog, a face of the all, a face for all, standing in stillness. Where in my body is this? Where does the light work? Now, not then, how, not when, a blue November, amber December, feel around the story, sonic flash, fighting for peace like screaming for quiet. Bend to the hollow heart, bow to the heart in flames, an evocative tease, a space for imagination. December roses, gulls on the water, thumb on the baseline, lilac on my tongue, wires in my teeth, garden of gods. Thank you.
All right, man in the books. You haven't gotten a contributor's copy. You get one from Ron. Kolm, who's also been very helpful in a lot of things with the book. When he found out about it, he was made a big effort to make sure that it got out to the bookstores around New York City back in March when we first started to distribute the collection out to independent bookstores around the country. So I want to thank Ron for doing that. He always mans the door there, which we appreciate. But he's also in the book, and he's got poems about the bookstore experience here in New York City. Please welcome Ron Kolm.
I just had surgery, so I'm pretty shaky. Sorry.
Try to raise the hand. There you go. I'll try not to. There you laugh. It's so hard. Okay. What kind of surgery, Ron?
Oh, you don't want to know. It was a great. Everything ripped open down there. It's not interesting. It's stupid. It's stupid. Hopefully I can actually see. Never mind. Hopefully I can see homes. Hard to see. Size, okay, it's a life lived in New York City bookstore. Size matters, where it began. When I first moved to the Big Apple, I lived in Hell's Kitchen. I stopped by the Gotham Book Mart, and because I was broke, I asked if they were hiring. Sure, a manager replied, pointing to a small table with a typewriter surrounded by tall stacks of books. There was a tiny steel chair, almost hidden beneath it. If you can fit, you got the job. I couldn't and didn't. Luckily, the Strand, a much larger store, eventually hired me, so I was able to remain a New Yorker. Yeah. And this isn't in the book, but I figured I'd try and get away with it. CBGB's. I worked in the Strand bookstore with Tom Verlaine. He invited me to CBGB's the first night his band Television played there. Punk was born that night.
Whoa!
I ended up getting into a fight with my date, and we left to take it outside. Tom yelled at me the next day, "Why the fuck did you split?" I responded by asking how the hell he knew I'd left. "I can see everything from the stage," he answered as he continued to shelve books. And the last one is, it takes a pandemic, which is where it's ended. Unfortunately, it's so true. It takes a pandemic to end a 50-year career of working in New York City's independent bookstores, which included the Strand, East Side Books, New Morning, Coliseum Books, St. Mark's, and Postman Books, which closed on March 16th, 2020 due to the virus. The last book I sold there was Camus' The Plague.
Oh,
We should get the reading.
Chelsea News. Chelsea News came out with an article about this book in tonight's show. No stranger to anybody in this room, please welcome fabulous Puma Perl.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be a part of this. I'd be really pissed if I wasn't part of it.
That's the best part. That's a New York poem.
Okay, this is my poem from the book. LES, Past and Pandemic. I was a child of 10th Street. Police locks and bodegas, open hydrants, rooftops, cerveza on credit. We were poor and tough, and we might have seemed hard, but if a child stumbled, 100 hands reached out to break his fall. In the street, on the stoops, under tenement skies, we were always home. Everywhere was home. I was a child of 7th Street. Tompkins Square Park was our front yard. Handball and Latin nights, rock shows on the bandshell, late nights on the benches. In the morning, we'd clear the sandbox of syringes so our kids could play, chasing each other past the wooden seesaws and the metal swings. The strip, the basketballs, the hills along 9th Street. I got the tea that killed Bruce Lee at the entrance. The park was home. I was a child of 3rd Street, the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, where I learned how words could feel. Lines for cocaine and welfare cheese, heroin and poetry, presidential 357 baskets lowered from 5th floor windows, hands creeping out of grates, abandoned buildings waiting for developers, kids sleeping on the Star Wars sheets, 3 eggs for Thanksgiving, Bacardi for Christmas. The streets were home. Down here in the lower, below Delancey, below Grand, I'm no longer a child. The sun rises in my window. I used to walk Diva up the East River Sundays or maybe down South Street. Now and then along a journey across Houston. And I am home. I am home, with keys and a couch and books and television. But in those pandemic times, empty highways and ferries below the window, I felt homeless. Those 10th Street days would flood my memory and remind me that everywhere is home. On stoops and streets, in rivers, under tenement skies, we are always home.
From the get-go, Patricia Spears Jones. She could not make it today, but to read for her a poem about the Mermaid Parade and kids coming back from the Mermaid Parade on the subway. Please welcome back to the stage, Francine Witte.
So this is for Patricia Spears Jones, who is recovering from, she had a bout with COVID, and she's on the mend. But, you know, it got her. So, this is Mermaid Parade poem, June 21st, 2014. 3 goddesses on the F train wear red lipstick and carry cell phones. They bestow their boons on those who smiled and waved at them. They smiled and waved back. And when they had to get on the F train to return to their temples in Carroll Gardens. The Red Lobster goddess has a slight accent, Slavic. She speaks about a man, not a boyfriend, no, he was my lover. Her body shimmers in the coolness of the F. Goddess with flowers in the hair smiles beatifically, as if she knows more than she is willing to say. The crowned goddess places her green crown studded with gold sea creatures in front of her, leaving her head bare, a loss of power. Except a gold scorpion barrette holds her hair-smart girl. Goddesses are a dime a dozen in New York City, maybe a quarter, a dozen in Brooklyn, where they cast their favors with gusto. Oh, goddesses who have walked the stairs from the Stillwell side, you are still and well. Here they are texting on the F train. A scented bath awaits each of them, almond and honey or lavender. Drinks later when the moon hovers and the day slowly leaves the bright sunniness to memory and Instagram. Patricia Spears Jones.
A poet who recently left us from Hanging Loose Press, Robert Hershon. You will recognize this situation immediately. Rick's Liquors. It looks like any liquor store until you get inside and discover that Rick, is that you? And all Rick's bottles and cash are behind plastic bulletproof partitions. And there's no way you can get within 2 feet of Rick or anything that belongs to Rick. We got tired of being ripped off and locked in the can, says Rick, sending your bottle down a little chute. Yeah, the very fine poet, Jerome Sala. Please welcome Jerome Sala.
This is a poem from the anthology. It's about the more pompous side of New York. You know, there's times when you live here, even the streetlights seem pretentious. Poseurs. The hammer pounding into the street is pretentious, asserting superiority over the asphalt that it shatters into chaos. Pretentious cars bounce over holes in the street as if they couldn't fall in if one was big enough. Dumb people think they own the street, while the sidewalk sarcastically sparkles beneath their feet. The sidewalk is pretentious, thinking it rivals the stars, but the stars are phonies too. A few billion years ago they were snuffed out, and now are mere hangovers from long gone events. Incompetent multitudes pretending to defy the infinite sky. Infinity is also a bullshit artist. Outside an infinite set are sets of infinite sets, and so on. The second poem, this isn't in the book, is about the pretentious pets that people have.
Yay! Finally, something politically relevant.
Called Ponytail Whiskers. The cats in that park were so well groomed that their whiskers were darned up in ponytails. And that blue-nosed pit bull, gray coat glimmering like a moving mirror in the sun. It's all in the feed, people say. Each pet owner, like a company, eager to make its mark, each pursuing and some discovering a logo. Here comes the talking ferret. He says to the ear next to the shoulder on which he sits, "Who's that asshole over there taking notes?" He thinks a poem is somehow more pure than my zircon collar. What a pompous, naive little prick.
I think worse than that is having to walk them. We will now bring up the aforementioned mermaid of Manhattan. Please welcome Jane LeCroy.
Come on, Jane. Take it.
Thank you for having me. It's so cool to be in a book. You don't need electricity for it. Maybe someday it will just be the books left. It'll be like the opposite of Alexandria. It's like there'll be the great blackout and all will have the books. That is, poetic magic right there. My son is like 14 and he was like, I wish I had a superpower, I wish I had a superpower. And I'm like, you can read.
Yeah.
You can read, okay? Like you can look at lines, squiggles on a page and picture universes, hear music. We have a superpower, we just take it for granted. It's like never enough. So, to your superpowers, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, from the inside, George Wallace actually stole the title of one of my albums to name the book. I was really flattered by that. Did you know that? From the Inside is the name of one of my records.
Oh my God.
Isn't that funny?
I hope you're collecting royalties.
I'm sure other people put those words together.
You can have
before.
half the profits if you have
never.
half the debt.
Yeah, from the inside. Okay, so in New York City where we're all so unique, we actually have these like really intense uniforms. You know if someone's exercising versus if they're going out for coffee versus if they're going to the opera or if they're going to hear rock music. It's how we are. But there's one thing we really all have. The tiniest difference. The cars are black. The phones are black. The suitcases are black. The pants are black. The dresses are black. The lingerie is black. The religious clothing is black. The formal clothing is black. It's hard to tell them apart. All the people wearing all that black. With those black things, in those black things. The people all so similar. Their needs identical. Their wants also particular and different. Some of them want to punish. Some of them want to love. They all need to eat. They all need somewhere to live. The borders are in their minds. Their teams, their countries, their religions, the baggage comes down, spit out onto the carousel. Traffic in the streets, goods on the racks, on the shelves. All the people look for theirs, the tiniest difference, a scratch, a stain, a feature, an imperfection, separating it from all the rest.
Yeah.
damage that identifies us, folks. We're the perfect thing. We'd all be the same, so, to your damage. So around the corner, when Wanda was reading about Gargoyle Mechanique and the gas station, like the 90s. So another thing you might remember Internet Cafe on First? Depop, who's someone else who's like a big New York City. Yeah, he used to run that place and book it, and he's R.I.P. He was like total Lower East Side legend and awesome supporter of the arts and made great shows happen.
I was just talking about Bush Tetra drummer.
Yeah, he was a great drummer. But I had a residency at First Street Cafe right around, just a few blocks over. And right next door, there was a psychic, tarot palm reader. And she had like 10 kids. And I would perform on First Street every Monday night for 3 years. And the kids loved my show because like I would wear fancy clothes and I'd be performing and they'd all be like, their faces pressed up against the window at 11 at night. And it just was like one of those New York things like, where do you see that? Like all the gypsy kids with their faces against the window. So I became friends with these kids because I would come every Monday night. And one time I said to one of the kids, who they were like 10 years old, I'm like, wow, so your mom is a psychic. Does she read your palms and tell you what to do and stuff? And he looked me in the eye and he said, I walk around like this. I will never show her my palms. She'll never know what I do. Right? Isn't that great? No, I walk around like she will never see my palms. She's not allowed to know what I'm gonna do. That's a little New Yorker. You don't know. You don't know. Soothsayer. I sat at the gypsy's table. She had a ring on every finger that clicked a Morse code as she sifted through the cards, piecing together the story. The stars at my birth gave us their math. She expanded it into my history and future, the love and deception that made me. It was a narwhal's tusk, not a unicorn horn. How can she know when we can't even predict the weather or be sure of our origin? The man I thought was my father was not. We don't get to choose the lines on our palms, and the crystal ball only reflects the room it's in, upside down. She tells everyone the same thing, something they want to hear and something they are afraid of. He's still your father, and there's another.
No.
All right, I'll read one more, is that okay? In New York we have like lots of museums and stuff, so this is like about a sculpture at the Met. It's called Sexy Roman. So sexy she lost her head and her arms and legs. Those lines of her torso though, her thighs scissoring apart are enough. And that edge of tunic pulled taut from her kinetic pose so delicate. Such an accomplishment for the heavy density of marble to convey. Curves of her shoulders alone tell us the weight of her arms. Sinistro, reaching back. Destro arcs forward. Her supple stone breast, burst with her heart for thousands of years now. Could you hear it beating if you cupped your warm ear to the cool mineral bust? We have the power to unleash light from solid blocks of earth, honed by carving tools. Our arms shape arms from the elements. With the elements, we chip away at our source. The damage reveals the dream. Humans have such powerful imaginations. We need so little, but want so much. We tear ourselves apart with desire, and we manifest through the violence of a kiss. This is what I mean when I ask you to destroy me. Look at how the beautiful bodies last through time, mere remnants conjuring the whole, our sorrow and our triumph.
astonishes me the number of poets who are partnered with other poets in New York. Some of you here have partnered with other poets. I don't know, we could probably count the number of cases in the book, if that's the case, but very distinguished person here writes about Mulberry Street and what it would be like to survive on arugula and espresso. A very fine poet, Elaine Equi.
Okay, so my first poem, I'm going to read 3 short poems, is called Mulberry Street. It is my favorite street in New York. I lived on it for many, many years. When I first saw it, I just fell in love with it. I've never really fallen in love with a street like that. This is Mulberry Street. It's the kind of street that would be behind one of those crooners who sang on TV in the 1950s. A street lamp, a cemetery, and a big full moon. What more could a person want or need? Oh, to live on nothing but arugula and espresso, forever doing penance in that somber church across the street. The one that's surrounded by a wall that leans on you as much as you lean on it. The one full of flickering lights and statues that talk. The dead, they say. The dead will outlive us all. The courtyard. This is another little pinpoint on the Google map of my life here in New York. This is the courtyard of the building I live in now. I call this an ashtray garden, or a handkerchief garden. Really just a small square spread between 2 buildings with a few flowers embroidered on it. Not big enough to have a picnic. Maybe a cigarette if smoking were permitted, which it isn't. We have strict rules in our building. Okay, and the last poem I'm going to read is called Muffin of Sunsets. And that line is, it's not mine, it's from a poem by Joe Chiarabolo. Muffin of Sunsets. And this place is, it would be on 8th or 9th Street, between Broadway and 6th Avenue, walking back and forth all the time to Cinderella's to get cupcakes. So it says Muffin of Sunsets. The sky is melting. Me too. Who hasn't seen it this way? Pink between the castle work of buildings. Pensive syrup drizzled over clouds. It is almost catastrophic, how heavenly. 1,000,000 poets, at least, have stood in this very spot, groceries in hand, wondering, can I witness the rapture and still make it home in time for dinner? Thank you.
Speaking of poetry, Jack Hirschman, he wrote a great poem and contributed to this before he left this mortal world. Balaban, a lot of you will know this. It's one of those reminiscences most of the poet laureates of San Francisco will have put out, you know, about growing up in New York City, in the neighborhood of New York. Balaban by Jack Hirschman. I ran down the street and into the house, smelled of oregano, and shook Mickey Monaco, said, come on, Balaban's got a bread loaf climbing over old Gruber's fence. He thinks the mad dogs is doves. But Mickey grew up in a bed till he was too old, and besides, Balaban was crazy. He sucked his tongue and got left back twice. So I ran to Joey Bellino's house, but his mother's black stocking said Joey was out early, shoe shining, and besides that, Balaban, he's a crazy kid. He sucks into the tongue. And Joey says, he got left back 3 times, so I banged on Bitsy Bella's window, yelled. He was near the top. The mad dog's waiting down below. He thinks it's doves, but when Bitsy stood up, he turned into a stiff cue stick. Didn't want nothing to do with nobody, cracked upstairs. And Dickie Miller became a semi-pro, and Howie Fish became a doctor. So I ran down the street full of hope by myself because I was on fire. But I got there too late for Balaban. Two of them had a stretch of skin between their teeth, fighting over it in the foam of their mouths, and Balaban's blood spattered in such a way the greatest picture looked me straight in the eye, made me sit in the gutter and cry, and when I got up, vowed to be Balaban from that day on. Jack Hirschman.
Ah, yeah!
Last time I saw Jack Hirschman was at Bob's place.
Yep, he's back here.
Yeah, it was a great show. Bob Holman, great showman. Please come on up, Bob Holman.
Yeah. Okay. It's my turn. Please heckle. Come on. I need some heckling. Where's Eileen Miles when I need her? Eileen knows heckle, except me. She heckles. What a great little stage, huh? I mean, I've never seen it, and maybe it's totally improper, and what we should all be doing is just sitting around reading to each other instead of having a stage. Did you ever think of that one? I don't know. Come over. Let's see. Put all your coats in a pile. And you're right, whoever it was who said, oh my God, the lights are... But this is Broadway. Somewhere between East Broadway and West Broadway. A little bit South Broadway. Fuck. Anyway, I want to start by saying that there's, I'm just going to say what I want to. And then say to Yuko, I apologize if what I said about Steve was, you felt was...
No, you didn't say anything wrong.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to do that, you can't do that anymore. I mean, if you want to heckle, gotta make sure there's school. Well, all right, I'm gonna read it. Thank you, Steve. By the way, did you know that to think that it happened on Mulberry Street was Dr. Seuss's first book?
What?
Yeah, to think, or maybe it was Bartholomew Cubbin's 1,000 Hats, the 1,000 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbin. But those are his two first books, and they have a very different rhythmic scheme to them than his later books. I love Mulberry Street. What else do I need to say? Well, I do want to say two more things. One is, do you all know John Balaban? You talk about Balaban. I don't think Hirschman was referencing John Balaban, but John Balaban is a marvelous poet who was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War and went to Vietnam to do his penance. And what he did was he edited, he got together anthologies of Vietnamese writers, and his translations are extraordinary. And finally, just to say, that these stories that we do before we read the fucking poems, when George Dow's Green came to the Nuyorican in the early 90s and heard these stories that Orion or whoever would come up there at the mic and tell, and then read their poems, he said, Jesus, wouldn't it be great to have just the stories and not have to listen to the poems? And I shit you not, that's how The Moth was born, So it's a true story. If you don't believe me, read his book, The Caveman, where it has a scene in the Bowery Poetry Club. All right, poems about New York, here they come. George, thank you. Thank you, everybody. If I were us,
Which you are.
I'd use this microphone, right? I mean, how come poets don't get this microphone?
That's for Elvis.
Whatever.
That's for Elvis Costello.
Hey, I love this stage, and I don't know if you met Lori, but this place is very, very cool. It's what we've been looking for, as a matter of fact. So let's have a good time listening to a poem. A real stage, and like a punk festival or something cool and loud. Salsa! Dear Shirley, this is your first morning in New York, and this poem lasts as long as life, and the Twin Towers are burning in the sky, and the Chrysler Building is keening, and the Empire State, all gray and stolid, is etching its shadow in the never-ending breakfast we call sky. Of course, all the New York poets are already out writing poems. Walt and Frank haven't even gone to bed yet. And we're all fetting Elizabeth Bishop, who, coincidentally, and believe me, everything in New York is a coincidence, breathing and walking, even this poem. And your first being here on the very day, here we go again, Senorita Bishop turns like a left turn right into 100 years old. Sing! Oh! So if this poem is long as life, and if Elizabeth B. is 100, what does it mean? What does it mean that we always ask poems is what we always ask poems, but since they're already out ahead of us, they only have time to briefly turn around in their kick-ass gym clothing and Fashion Week accessories and shouting whatever and tumbling on directly and digitally into a future where the Poetry Project, Neurik and Bowery Poetry Club, Poets House, Poetry Society, Poet Academy, Max Fish, all the other holy stuff, Taylor Mead's bathtub, Frank O'Hara's haircut, John Giorno's mouth, and Waldman's energy closet, all sitting up with Langston Hughes and Ginsey and Frank Lima and Julio de Burgos and Pedro Pietri's there. And rest assured, that's the motto of the day. Rest assured. As your yellow taxi turns the boogie-woogie crisscross streets into Mondrian, as MoMA becomes Yo Mama, as Harlem beckons home, and Kai and I are going to read at the club tonight at 6 o'clock, and who knows who will show up, and what's the other thing, for sure, that who will know is, you know what it is, the other thing, it's a poem that's out of sight, and to read it, you got to catch it, which means you got to write it. And there's Eileen Miles, she says that all the time in Ellison Glen. Bosia, you can hear him saying it at Miguel Algarin, written in the sky, which is now prepping lunch. And your table is ready, oh, so ready to spin. Okay. Is it time for me to do another one? Well, I've only got two more, but luckily it's just one. It's from this book that I have grown attached to, which was edited by the editor, so it's now called The Unspoken. It used to be Bob Holman and the Spoken Word Movement, but now it's just called The Unspoken. And this poem which was commissioned by Grand Central Station at its 100th birthday, is called Grandly and Centrally. Grandly and centrally, locally, universally, typically, cryptically, proto-triumphantly, you come here to go there, literally everywhere, hip, trippin', flip-float, no, me, and a ring. Grandly and centrally, methodically, centrifugally, take what you want to be, multi-directional simultaneity, zapping Higgs boson, reality's gluon. The station sits formidably, maddeningly, meddlesomely. The ratchety manifest, the voluminous steamer chest, the rivets and pivots and divots of rush. A trip to the seashore, picnic in a box, pickles, gefilte fish, smeared in some blocks, fried chicken, verenicas, collards, and grits, hot dogs and frog's legs, don't dish the dish. Tamales, pastelli, spaghetti, and gravy, call in the Navy. More hot sauce and quick, and the goat's still unroasted, and the bagel untoasted, and the toddler is gurgling glee. As the constellations sealing, the gods still are stealing glances at humans as they bump, dodge, careen. You cross time with space, you cross space with time, just as you can rhyme sublime with sublime. And the blizzard and tickers keep falling from outer space, and sunrise smiling through the conductor's face. And this glorious moment can't keep up with the human race. 'Cause you're waltzing in Grand Central with the love of your life. A single accordion is playing your life. The moment is stuck and recycles again. Just because it stops don't mean that it ends. So keep lining up chumps, Facebook the rumps, lined up before you in sweltering clumps. Maybe this is your stop. Maybe this is where it ends. Someone passes you getting on. For them it begins. For you're going somewhere, somehow, sometime. And the place you will land, you don't know with whom you will dine. But some strega picayunes and a ghost on the dunes. And your family's tunes they toast randomly. For it's grandly, so grandly. And ever so centrally, let's call it a century, Grand Central Station.
We've unscripted addition to the show. We're going to welcome up to the stage to play us a song, a staple of the New York City poetry scene, and musician Rick Eckerle.
I think we're set up here. Thank you, Joy. You should give me this one right too.
It's been a number of years on a program over on Cooper Square. Wait some more. coffee or making lunch in my coat. Coffee and coffee in my coat. Yeah, wonder while I try to dance the road. I can't go nowhere alone. I go below the underground. I go below the underground.
Regie Cabico. He's alive and well in Washington, D.C. Came up to Philadelphia and read for us in Philadelphia. And here to read his poem is Francine Witte.
All right. Yay.
Yeah, like as George said, we saw Reggie in Philadelphia. We were at AWP, and we had a really nice, sort of an after party, after AWP reading. So he came up for that. I've always had such an affection for Reggie, because when I came back to New York rather, in '92, I was in a workshop with him, and it was one of these things at the West Side Y, and I read a poem, and 2 years later, I went to the Whitney when it was still up on the Upper East Side, and he was there, and this is 2 years later, mind you, and I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Francine." He goes, "Yeah," and he recited lines from the poem in the workshop, which it just blew my mind. So aside from him being just a really, really nice person, as most of you know, this is Regie Cabico's poem. It's not so much his kiss I recall as his voice. A shy pebble rippling water, each phrase a school of startled ginger fish shimmering through the telephone line. I'd like to invite you to my place, and immediately I become a frightened puppy in a tropical rainforest. Only to my surprise, I was in Brooklyn, reading Lorca in his living room, calmly sipping tea. He played me Joni Mitchell, crooning the lines he loved, and even tried to sing the high notes. His falsetto cracking mid-air as we both laughed. That's when he rested a photo album on his lap and pulled a picture of himself, a young boy swimming in a Buenos Aires blue reflecting pool. I wanted to lick the nape of his neck, instead said, "You'll have to teach me how to swim. I'm afraid of water." That's when he placed his lips to mine, our most perfect palates open as we pulled away to catch our breath. "You have to be relaxed, otherwise you'll drown." I kissed him again, feeling ribs beneath sweatshirt, our hearts racing the way a diver free falls, plunging in a sea of pearls. Thank you. Regie Cabico.
Hal Sirowitz, who we all miss very much here in New York, inside, outside. I see myself as the perpetual outsider. By living in Queens, I visit the inside, Manhattan, which was always hopping with people no matter what time it was. The streets were alive with the sounds of introductory remarks. I met lots of women at bars and social gatherings, but few wanted to come home with me. They said Queens was too far away. Going to their place was not practical. The best way to throw a monkey wrench in the engine before getting off the ground was to mention going to a hotel. The conversation would immediately turn to the topic of bed bugs. They said girls just wanted to have fun and not search for bed bugs. I'd rather be an outsider waiting for the milk train. Hal Sirowitz.
Yeah.
Next up, I'd like to introduce the guy who taught me that it's possible to be on NPR and to take over, really bring poetry to the world in New York and beyond, across the country and internationally. So please welcome Andre Codrescu.
Thank you. When I hitchhiked from Romania here to New York in 1966, everybody said, "Where are you from?" Well, not really. I mean, I would say, well, I'm from Brooklyn, in Manhattan. But I ended up saying I'm from Transylvania, which really worked great. And then I worked at the 8th Street bookstore. Ron is the only bookstore he didn't mention. The 8th Street was great. Ted Williams was such a great gentleman. And I got busted once for no good reason. I spent the night at Tombs. My boss, the owner, Ted, he paid the bail and took $10 out of my weekly check. Never mentioned it. A real gentleman. Anyway, so I feel like I've lived in New York. Of course, being, from a place like so doing things too, like saying, well, I got tired of being from Transylvania, Romania, Eastern Europe, so when I was panhandling, I said, I'm Hungarian, can you spare a dime? That worked. So after, New York never went away, but then I moved back during the well, not during, but just shortly before the pandemic. So this, I guess, was written just after, because I did get COVID just before they knew what it was. It didn't have a name. I felt horrible. The city. In August 2020, birds got fat. They started turning back into dinosaurs. They didn't miss people. Rats, on the other hand, missed restaurants. The better ones, reviewed in the Times. There's so many rat snobs in the infernal months of August 2020. The birds and the rats compete for the future. We humans developed a dream life that features either wings or fur. In the morning, we shower, put on work clothes, and walk into the next room to work on self-erasure. Day and night mean little now. Are shaking the jello cube of time. At night, me and my friend jump over walls after putting phosphorus on our hands. We escape from people. We meet a masked subway rat named Henna. At midnight on the Bowery, we discuss astrophysics. Sometimes we roll a ball of dark energy on the rails of an empty train and then lie down somewhere in the city. I think I was coming from Brooklyn, but I met Henna in the subway, and I was going to read the poem for my new book called No Time Like Now. And it is and this was early on when I first, this was I think probably in the first months I moved back. It's from something called Sad Americans Writing in Cantinas, Too Drunk to Tell if they are walking into La Barranca or into the literary canon. Guy rolls out of an organic burrito joint, angry. I am not a customer. Am I not a novelist? You're a Brussels sprout. There is only one perp, time. It's a recidivist. always at it. You know it well. It is the reason you're neither a customer nor a novelist. It's not your fault. Once you blamed your youth, then your friends, and the jokes they told, and hated how you laughed before you even heard the punchline. At some point, you set out to know everything so you could laugh at it later. But most things you set out to know didn't want to know you. The timing wasn't right. They were serious. They crumpled your pages, fucked with your diet, post-dated your discoveries, called 911 to report your car for hit and run, surrounded you with cheap alarm clocks you had to wear on the outside of your coat. Alarms ringing as you walked to the bar. It made all the tower clocks go bong bong, all day and all night long. Happily, you didn't hear them. You were in Mexico to drink yourself to death. Time sat on your left hip like a gnome and made you rhyme like a fucking metronome. It was personal. It was personal. And people never knew you were Malcolm Lowry. Some people who know a novel from a Brussels sprout put you on the list of keep an eye on that corner, and kept that eye on you for over a century.
Maybe said that in his bio in the book that his children playing parks that were too gnarly for him when he was a kid. But there's some people that remember Anselm Berrigan playing in the streets and playing inside St. Mark's Poetry Project, and he's been on the scene since he was a little kid, getting shooed out of the way. He's a very central important figure in poetry today. Thank you for welcoming Anselm Berrigan.
Hi. I was just uptown doing something weird. How's that? Good. Okay, yeah.
Could the hecklers get some microphones, please?
I don't have any wireless mics, you have to bring your own.
Okay, if we bring our own, you'll plug us in the system. All right, I like this place.
I didn't even know this room existed. I've never been above the second floor. I guess that makes me...
Make sure you go to the bathroom. That's really, really nice.
Oh, okay. Cool.
In the brochure.
And thank you, that's good. Thanks for having me here. This is called Poem Inspired by Everything, to Charles North. Charles North had his book come out in 2020. Came out in like March. The best time to have a book come out. It's called Everything and Other Poems. And so I wrote this, I was reading his poems and I wanted to imitate him. I really should say after Charles North, I suppose, but who cares? Poem Inspired by Everything. I would just like to point out, but I always end up pointing in. Everyone's holier than thou, and I'm definitely rolling the dice. A camo-clad gent with dark beer a good 16 fiats away exclaims, just as I was measuring how to use inkling in a work. This report brought to you by the Tompkins Square Park Social Distancing Fretwork. And Aaron Shern's elegant purple mask on Instagram matching a double pair of purple gloves I cycled by on B a minute ago. They did possess hands attached to gaily striding arms, accompanied by too comfortable a projection, smiles. My own powdered transparent gloves make my fingers look desiccated. A thought parallel to a fuzzy pink gas mask sported by a fellow strolling by 20 feet away. 50 masks for $70 at the stationery store on A, if you ask. Grayish blue in intent, a whole other present. My idea of a sentence, a summary of daily briefings delivered by Rainbow Buntings. The horseshoe bar selling drinks to go to a politely spaced line. And when the dawn, distracted from its game of catch with figure and ground, speaks, I just keep listening to this fish, aghast at the split fins I and we call legs. I hear sitting in these fins, sunlight a costume of horizontal neon bars, early pandemic bloom lines coming through the cracks the clouds briefly perform. Sorry about that. I printed out this other poem, but I forgot one of its pages. Oh, wait a minute. Shit. I called up what I thought was my poem. It's actually my brother's poem. You ever do that?
The wrong computer.
I've never done that. Wow. New shit.
Come on, Bob, you took his brother's poem.
Why don't you go talk to my brother?
I hung out with your brother yesterday, Bob.
Yeah. How is it?
It was cool. We talked about taxes. Oh, fuck this. Okay. So I was gonna read this poem of mine called Things to Do Between Home and School in 1986. But it's lost. So instead I'm gonna read this poem my brother just wrote called Things to Do on the Lower East Side in the late 70s and 80s. I think he's edited it a little bit, so this is not the best version. But I don't think he'll mind. Okay. And this is sort of after, our father wrote a lot of Things to Do poems. My favorite line in one of them is actually in a more obscure poem called Things to Do in Bolinas, and the line is, watch the natives suffer. Things to do on the Lower East Side in the late 70s and 80s. So this would be him talking about being between the ages of 4 and 8. Walk into a strong wind with Mom and feeling like we're about to be blown away. Hear the way Dolphy says, chump. What's up, chump? Hear Leroy say, hey, all right, in his deep vocal tone after your squeaky, high-pitched voice has said, hi, Leroy. Sit on the stoop with Dad. When an attractive woman has passed by, he says, look at her, Eddie. Woo-woo. You giggle, but this really has nothing to do with you. Contemplate the supers. One is a guy named Bruno who works for the Mafia. One day, for some reason, he punches Dad and breaks his glasses. Later, he apologizes, but it is probably only slightly different than the punching. Contemplate Jeffrey. Jeffrey likes cocaine, S&M, and staying up late. Less so little boys running back and forth across his ceiling in the early morning. He complains about our laughter. One day there is a leak in his kitchen. He knocks on the door and giant naked blonde poet Steve Carey, dripping wet, answers it. You don't hear much from Jeffrey after that. The bathtub is in the kitchen and so is the front door of the apartment. Make friends with Min and Linda who live down the hall. They have a pet rat named Jenny Anydots. One day a rat appears in our apartment. We ask them if it's Jenny, but they say no. Dad sends us out. We walk around the block, but Mom is worried to leave him alone too long. We return and poet Hannah Wiener is there, giggling and sweeping. Dad has tried to kill the rat with fire and water and is holding a stick with a rusty nail sticking out of the end of it. In his tidy whities. The rat is currently interacting with the cat who will not attack it. There's a knock on the door. It's Min and Linda. We can't find Jenny. They hold out a nacho chip and say, here, Jenny. And the rat runs out from under the oven and jumps into their arms and they leave. The apartment smells like burnt paper and there's a giant puddle of water on the floor. Tell Dolphy you're a poet. He asks you to recite a poem. Dolphy was a carpenter and an artist who had a shop on St. Mark's Place between 1st and 8th for a long time. You are shy and say you don't remember any. He pointedly recites a multi-verse rhyming ballad about the virtues of being a redhead versus being bald. He completes it by pointing at you, smiling, and walking away. He wasn't a redhead. Here the neighborhood kid Lawrence, as he yells, Anselm! Anselm, come down! At the 3rd floor window. Sometimes our downstairs neighbor Byron does the same. Byron introduces us to porno and rap music, though not on the same day. Byron stays up till midnight listening to WBLS and tapes the programs, playing them for us the next day. DJ Red Alert going berserk, zerk, zerk. PSK, we're making that green. People always saying, what the hell does that mean? Byron is a few years older. He is your friend, and you hang out and go see movies like American Ninja at the Essex Street Theater. You see it so many times that you make plans to say oh shit in unison at key moments in the film. You start taking guitar lessons at the 3rd Street Music School, which is on 11th Street for some reason. The teacher is kind and patient, and you enjoy the lessons. One day Byron invites us to watch a porno on his VHS, but you decline because you have a guitar lesson. You leave the building at the appointed time and walk down the street. Byron is coming the other way, pointing at you and cackling with his other hand covering his face. You are a kid, so you can talk to all neighbors with impunity. You are sitting in the restaurant downstairs with a neighbor named Adam, a musician. He looks up and says, there's Thurston, and calls out, hey Thurston. The tall guy turns around and waves. That's Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth. That might be the whole band with him. You don't know who these people are and you don't care. Adam offers to give me an ice cream bar that's in his freezer if you write a poem and show it to him. You agree. You've already written several poems, so you just grab one of those and show it to him, returning victorious with ice cream. When you see Adam later in life being filmed for a music video, he tells the person next to him that he once got me to write a poem by offering me ice cream. When you see Thurston later in life, he tells me that he used to see my dad talking to young people on the street corner near Gem's Spa and thought he was a cult leader. Visit Tompkins Square Park, head to the playground near Avenue B, crawl under the turtle with your friend. 2 older boys come in behind on either side, blocking your escape. One produces a lighter and burns you on the thumb. Horrified by his own actions, he backs away and lets you out. Walk on 10th Street with your friend John to go buy some toys and get mugged by 2 older boys. They ask for money, but you don't give it to them. One says, oh ho, he's hard, and then grabs you by the throat. Your friend says, give it to him, so you do. When John tells his mother, he gets down on his knees, afraid she won't believe him. You call your mother, then John's mother calls the police. They don't really say anything, so Mom yells, tell them something, they're kids with no fathers. They say, go to the Life Cafe if it happens again. But it won't happen again, and you didn't have a chance to run away. Look down St. Mark's Place with your brother and see your Portuguese counterparts, Michael and Johnny from 9th Street. Michael and Anselm have an antagonistic relationship and scuffle. Johnny and I become friends at school, and when the older siblings see this, they too become friends. One day they give us a beautiful orange cat named Doll. Their father is dying and has a colostomy bag. They give us the cat because it had taken up scratching the bag. When their father dies, they move back to Portugal. Be afraid to go past Avenue A, but do it anyway because your friend John lives there. One time when you visit him, an older boy offers to shake your hand, but then tears the Lee patch halfway off of the back of your jeans. You run away, but realizing you can't escape, you tear the patch off fully and give it to him. If you collected a certain amount of patches you could send away for something. It must have been something good. Remember another time you had visited John just past Avenue B. Little Stephen and Clarence Clemens were there filming the video for Artists Against Apartheid. Little Stephen addresses the flock of children. Help fight drugs on this block, he says. But I don't live on this block, you reply. Well, help fight drugs on your block, he says. Watch yourself grow older. When you walk down St. Mark's Place to First Avenue, a trio of drug dealers are there and greet everyone with the words sense, sensimilla. Then one realizes you are a kid and apologizes to you. This happens several times until he finally asks you your name. Eddie. Eric? Don't do drugs, Eric. Don't be like me. You become regular hello buddies, but to him you are Eric. Watch your friend Roger's dad get embarrassed once because you say hi to him while he's buying sensimilla for one of the trio. Grow weary of bougie eats. There is a period of your life where the only food you are interested in is an English muffin with butter and jelly, either from Odessa or Leshko's. Barbara Bard tells you, you have to have some nutrients, so you order a chocolate milk. Bump into Allen Ginsberg, Joanne Kiger, and Donald Gurvich on the way to a movie with your folks. Decide to skip the movie and go to the Yaffa Cafe with them instead. Alan is sitting opposite you. How's your sex life, he asks. I don't have one. Why not? I have no money and no privacy. How's yours? I can't get it up like I used to. You're just in a slump, you say, encouragingly. No, I'm old, he says. He draws Buddha on a napkin and gives it to you. You're tasked with retrieving Philip Whalen from Alan's apartment and escorting him to dinner. You and your brother arrive and do so. Philip is going blind due to glaucoma. As you walk down 2nd Avenue, he looks at signs across the street, taking his glasses on and off, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. Do this on another occasion alone. Before you ring the bell, Peter Orlovsky comes out recognizing you. Do you still play the guitar? Yes, I do. What about the mandolin? Nope. Banjo? No. Zither? No. Hammered dulcimer? No. You should take those up, he says, and breezes out the door. Play ball in the street with Lawrence because the park is full of muggers, junkies, and homeless people. Play wiffle ball at various locations until the ball hits a window and everybody runs away. Play Nerf football until interrupted by the inevitable shout of car, or when the ball is thrown into the fenced yard of the little missionary day school, the old woman who runs it gleefully tears out chunks of the stuffing before tossing it back to punish you. Be in a Rolling Stones video. You can see the crowd gathered around from your apartment window as Mick Jagger stands and looks cool on a nearby stoop. Dad sends Anselm out with a signed copy of So Going Around Cities to trade for an autograph. He does not get one, but ends up in a shot in the video where Keith Richards is walking down the street. Anselm has upstaged him, partly by being in the foreground and partly by clearly not giving a shit that he's in a Rolling Stones video. Go to an engagement party on Avenue A and find out that Karen Allen is there. Dad brings her over to chat with us in our booth. Were you scared in the part of the movie where the snake was coming out of the corpse's mouth? She says no, it was just special effects. You feel that she didn't really understand your question, but she is nice and gives you both her autograph. Walk down Avenue A with Anselm and get approached by a woman who asks you if you want to be in a movie. No, says Anselm, confiding in me as we walk away. We don't know what kind of movie it is.
Okay, bringing us home, Francine Witte.
So, what would a New York night be without the moon? This is called The Moon Takes the E-Train. Stumbles drunk from a downtown dive, swirling himself milk into coffee down the stairs and onto the train, and then forgets his way home. Gets off instead at 40 Deuce, looks around and remembers the old style scene, hookers and porn flicks. How often in his fullness he would push some poor sucker into Mr. Nasty's peep show, watch him skulk out later, face wiped off, slither home to Bridge and Tunnel, lighter, $20. But then the whole place went carnival, wax museums and kiddie theater, life-sized Elmo and Elsa who will pose with you for a hefty tip. And he's looking around at all the lights blinking into the darkened dark, and that's when a couple approaches the moon and asks to take a selfie. How much it would mean, what with the moon being the thing that made them fall in love. And the moon has heard it all before, how he's pulled the tides and planted romance, but really, he has a long, long night ahead, trying to remember which subway will take him back to the sky. But instead, the moon takes a breath, looks at his reflection in the couple's eyes, nestles in between them, and smiles.
Whose poem is that?
I want to say, first of all, thank you to Lori for this gorgeous space. It's just like, I always think of this as the speakeasy, right?
It is.
Right, nobody knows it, you know. And also all of you, because you were so easy to correspond with and so good about getting back to me when I invited you to this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And just to close it out, just to close it out, give you our editor, the wonderful George Wallace.
I've got nothing to read because I only have a half a set of glasses. Except this. What I want you to do is put your hands together for yourselves. And I'm going to read these without my glasses. Yuko Otomo, Wanda Phipps, Kolm, Puma Perl, on behalf of Patricia Spears Jones, Jerome Sala, Elaine Equi, Bob Holman, Anselm Berrigan, Jane LeCroy, Anselm, and Codrescu. What a fabulous evening.
Yeah.
Let's take the time.